single greatest time-saving tool I ever did was teaching myself how to stop getting sick. Did you know the average American spends as many as 90 days per year experiencing some sort of immune dysfunction? This can be things like brain fog, aches, pains, fatigue, anything that stops you from being 100%. 90 days is basically a quarter of the entire year. And during those times, it makes it nearly impossible to grow, develop, and improve. People spend all this time and money trying to figure out what diet, what routine, what peptide I should do. Meanwhile, a quarter of the year, your body is literally stopping you from improving in any way, shape, or form. What becomes even crazier to me is so many people still think their immune system is like playing the lottery, like it's just random chance. My experience and the experience of others has proved that it is a highly predictable and trainable machine. In this video, I'm covering everything about the diet, lifestyle, protocols necessary for almost anybody to avoid 99% of all sicknesses. This may not strike the average guy who's just on YouTube trying to find how to get a six-pack, but for those of you who are really in the optimization realm and know how important consistency is over short-term gain, this is the video that's going to make all the difference. Starting with the first, and in my opinion, the most important one on this list, and the best part is it's completely free. Natural circadian lighting mixed with mitochondrial voltage. If you've been subscribed to this page, you know over the last year I have been obsessed with my mitochondria, and it seems to have taken the health industry by storm. There's a few things you can do that don't require peptides, protocols, supplements that can really improve the mitochondria. I've been structuring my entire immune system around my internal master clock, my circadian rhythm. Viewing unfiltered morning sunlight for about 30 minutes mixed in with some sort of light exercise, I like to do an ab routine, some people like to walk, triggers an immune response that spikes morning cortisol. Cortisol isn't just a stress hormone. It acts as a massive daily alarm clock, and it forces bone marrow to release immune cells into the bloodstream. Now, I like to pair this with some vitamin D3, K2, as well as some sort of red light therapy. If you don't know, the best red light therapy comes from morning sunlight. So you don't need these big bulky panels. If you can get outside between that 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. time slot, that's when the red light from the sun naturally is at its highest, sunrise. Red light directly charges our mitochondria. It activates what's called cytochrome C oxidase, which, if you can imagine, are little battery packs inside each of our mitochondria that house our ATP, our cellular energy. This is a necessity for our immune cells to operate at the frequency necessary to defend the way that we need. Before we get started, it is important to note that I'm not a doctor, and nothing I say here should be misconstrued with medical advice. If you're going to follow through with any of these protocols, please make sure you're only doing so under the direct advisory of a medical specialist in this field. Now, let's get into it. This mechanism was backed up by an extensive study on photobiomodulation, led by Dr. Michael Hamblin in the Harvard Medical Journal, confirming that red and near-infrared wavelengths upregulate cellular mitochondrial activity and immune cell viability. Imagine all the cells in your body, specifically the immune ones, are all solar powered, and the best time to get that solar power, instead of being in the middle of the day, comes from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. That's usually the best way to look at how to get the most red light and how to charge your cells for the most energy. Number 2 on the list is a peptide I've found a lot of success with, and that is Thymosin Alpha-1. Thymosin Alpha-1, as you could have guessed, is produced in the thymus gland, which is the master training center for all of your immune activity. In my experience, TA1 has become an incredible immunomodulator. It's been studied for its ability to mature and differentiate your T cells. The whole purpose of our T cells is to identify and neutralize viruses that come into the body. What happens with a lot of us is our diet, our lifestyle, our external factors, other medications, whatever it is, ends up creating really lazy and dormant T cells that don't do their job. Unlike a lot of the more broad stimulants on the marketplace that can cause pretty dangerous autoimmune flare-ups, TA1 does its job by balancing cytokine activity, which makes it really unique in its ability to boost up underactive defenses as well as bring down chronic inflammation. For those of you who have ever been in the military or a fraternity or anything where they take a new group of initiates every year, it's kind of like when you're bringing in the fresh batch of new guys and they all suck still, and they need that drill sergeant to snap them into shape. That's essentially what TA1 does in the body. You're going to have your guys who are lazy and unmotivated, or you're going to have the opposite, the guys who are the troublemakers. TA1's job is to come in and make sure everybody fits in line where they need to go. I've had one or two of you guys call out my analogies. I guess they don't resonate with everybody. For me, they make sense in my head. If you don't get them and you need more help, let me know. That's the only way I can improve. The next item on the list is the most significant change I've made in any sort of supplement, peptide, anything relating to my immune system. This was the number 1 input that I made. That is none other than glutathione. I truly believe over the next few years, we're going to identify more and more use cases for glutathione because it seems to benefit every scenario about weakness in the human body. Whether that be from things like alcohol, immune, drug, bad diet, any damage that we do to the body, seems like almost all of it can be cured with glutathione, and that's just from what we know. Now in this scenario, I'm specifically talking about injectable. There are arguments for oral glutathione, but I do have a problem with it. A lot of times it gets completely ripped apart by our stomach acid and we don't get the full effect. The injectable makes it possible to bypass the liver and get more of this master antioxidant directly into our bloodstream. Our white blood cells produce tons of ROSs, which if you follow this page, you know stands for reactive oxygen species, which in simple terms are like toxic chemical fires that go off in our body that also burn up viruses. But if your cells lack antioxidant protection, those same chemical fires will burn and melt your healthy tissue. Injectable glutathione targets this specific oxidative stress, protecting your liver, lung tissues, and cellular membranes. A good way I've thought about this is imagine you have your house, but it's infested with bugs. Now, some people just take a flamethrower and burn every bug in the house. Yes, you've killed all the bugs, but you've also probably destroyed your home. Glutathione ends up acting as a fireproof spray that you can put on all your items so that you don't burn up your couch, your carpet, or anything else in your house, and you can just nuke the bugs. Now, of course, just like anything, I could sit here and explain how my mitochondrial protocol also played a role in this, but if you want to find out more of that, I'll have the mitochondrial optimization video linked in the description below so that all of you guys can go through and see everything necessary when it comes to the SS31, epitalon, pinealon, MOTS-c, everything you can do to improve your mitochondrial ability to have a higher immune output. The single greatest area I think people overlook is that nearly 70% of our immune function is created within our gut. In my experience, the moment I start eating a modern diet or anything with ultra processed foods, seed oils, anything that a typical American diet would consist of, I instantly feel the repercussions. That's because these foods are packed with what's called linoleic acids. These seep directly into our cellular membranes and causes what's called chronic lipid peroxidation, which leads to even bigger problems like leaky gut, which I believe way more Americans probably have than they realize because nobody checks their gut. Leaky gut allows toxic bacterial particles to split off from your gut and get into your bloodstream. Now, to most people, they don't realize how dangerous that is because what is the #1 connection that our gut makes? It's to our brain. That's why things like serotonin, how happy we are, the chemical that creates happiness in our body, doesn't get produced up here, it gets produced in the gut. Well, when these toxic bacteria leave our gut and get into our bloodstream, it goes directly to our brain and causes our brain cells to inflame. This is what causes brain fog, fatigue, and all of the areas that cause somebody to not be at 100% or stop them from growing and developing on those sick days. This is where it comes from. It's a completely paralyzed immune response. And here's the most messed up part. Some of the healthiest human beings on the planet who are experiencing no symptoms, right, because they feel normal, everybody thinks they're not experiencing symptoms because this is just normal to them until they feel like what it's like to not have those. For me, the first time I realized this was with my hormones. I just assumed it was normal to be tired in the middle of the day. I assumed it was normal to not want to go to the gym every day and not have the energy until I felt like what it was like to have optimized testosterone. And all of those problems went away and I felt amazing and ready to go all the time the way someone in their 20s should. The same thing happens with our gut. Everybody just assumes these stomach problems, these brain problems, this fatigue, brain fog, whatever is normal. It's not. And until you do something to identify if you have these problems, you'll never know until it's too late. And this is the biggest problem with the American style of medicine is everybody waits until they're in the danger zone, until it's become such a huge problem that you have to use things like antibiotics or surgery that are gonna cost 10 to 100 times more than just preventing the issue from happening in the first place. But that'll never get pushed by our medical system because they make way more money waiting until you're super messed up. That makes me sick. I recently found out that I have some gut problems. Now I'm catching them very early because I'm someone who just proactively looks for this kind of stuff. The average person would never look for that if they didn't feel anything. I just wanted to know. Now I'm catching myself. The guy who's walking me through this said, if I hadn't have caught this, I would have ended up autoimmune and I would have ended up with far greater problems in a few years from now. I'm about to begin a full gut protocol of my own and I'll be documenting that series for you guys as well. But it's really important to start understanding these things a little bit better. Now, for people that want to know if they have this problem in their gut or just want to do the diagnostics the way I did, I recently added them to my company because of how impactful I felt when I did it for myself. I'll have that linked in the description, but be prepared. A gut test is not just a regular blood test. How do you get somebody to do that? Well, do you want to have an autoimmune disease or do you want to shit in a bag? Your call. More importantly, ways to combat this, it starts with food. The easiest ones to avoid, and I don't care what your political affiliation is, because for some reason, where you stand on certain health issues has become a political decision, where if you support seed oils, you're a Democrat, and if you're against them, you're a Republican. How did that happen, by the way? Because 20, 30 years ago, it was the complete opposite. But without a doubt and unequivocally science-backed, the use of seed oils in our cooking oxidizes our cells. There is no debate about it. It causes inflammation. You can avoid this by using grass-fed saturated fats, eating things like pasture-raised eggs, bone broth, wild salmon, ribeye, whatever. My weapon of choice, ground beef. I eat 2 pounds a day. This gives the body the amount of cholesterol needed to repair the gut. Also, when it comes to gut repair, we have to acknowledge things like BPC 157. Now, when it specifically comes to gut, I've noticed that the oral can actually be a little bit more effective than the injectable, which is something I will never say about a peptide ever, because nearly every oral peptide is a load of crap, and anybody trying to give you oral CJC or oral sermorelin, run from that, because that's trash. But the only reason that the BPC is directly effective for the gut is because orals go where? To the gut. One thing it will absolutely not do is fix your knee pain or your elbow pain. That has to be from the injectable. This is also going to help the entire body's production of immune and regular cellular walls. Keeping those cellular walls strong prevents systemic tissue breakdown, which will directly add another layer in fighting off chronic fatigue. Speaking of fatigue and hormones, your endocrine system and your immune system are some of the most directly linked parts of the body. Having crashed or unbalanced hormones can directly lead to the weakening of our immune cells. This is why we find that as we're teenagers going through puberty, we end up sick so much more often than when we're adults because our hormones are fluctuating so much. Testosterone, if you didn't know it, acts like a baseline immunomodulator, which means it's going to directly control the expression of inflammatory genes, as well as preventing overactive autoimmune flare-ups. Then you've got your DHEA, which acts as the counter to your chronic stress. As a lot of us come to find out the hard way in adulthood, chronic stress ends up being the killer of both immune system, physical system, mental, pretty much everything in the body. Having an optimal range of DHEA gives the body enough T cell production to combat these problems. It's important to note that hormones aren't working like glutathione, where you directly inject it and it has a direct effect. But it is the signaling system that's going to create those effects. A good way to picture it is crashing your hormones is essentially like cutting off your phone and your radio system in a time of war and not having any way to contact the soldiers and troops who need to go fight the bad guys. The last thing that's made a huge impact for me is something that you could call a conspiracy, tinfoil hat, whatever, and it's avoiding the traditional medical system. Whether we like to admit it or not, all of the drugs and all of the treatments that we're gonna get from our regular PCP or our hospital system or wherever are not designed to cure us, they're designed to mask our pain. Especially when it comes to things like illness, what's the number one thing that gets prescribed? Antibiotics. What is the single most damaged area when it comes to antibiotics? The gut. Do you think that that is some kind of coincidence? That the one area that makes up 70% of our immune system is the most affected area by our treatment for immune system in the United States. When we get sick, when we have strep throat, when we have a cold, when we have the flu, when we have anything, we give ourselves medication that gets rid of that virus but nukes our entire gut microbiome. That is only going to bring us back to that same situation faster the next time, which is why I cannot stress enough that every single American needs to stop waiting until they get sick to become proactive about their immune system. Stop waiting until there's a problem to do something about it, because this is only going to cost people more money. But it's impossible to get that message across to them because it doesn't cost them more money today. If you were to go out and take these proactive steps right now, you're going to spend more money today than if you had just waited. But over the course of the next 3 to 5 years, if you had just taken all the precautions now and started doing these things, you wouldn't experience any of these sicknesses ever again, because your body would be so adept at handling them and it wouldn't be constantly getting destroyed by the crap that they're feeding us. I could sit here and go about this for hours with you guys. The overarching theme is you have to take this into your own hands. So if you want to learn more ways about how to improve the human body, make sure that you operate at the highest echelon of human performance and avoid all of the negative ramifications that come with the American health system. I post 2 videos like this every single week where I teach people a new way to improve the mind, body, or anything about being a human. If you want to stay in tune with this, hit the subscribe button and turn on post notifications so that you don't miss another one, and I will see you guys in the next one.